Rolling. Right on. Well, now, yeah, so I watched a Michael Bay film for the last pod I did. Been kind of having a shitty 24 hours. I've just kind of had some shit going on. So I thought it'd be a fun idea to kind of torture myself. But I'm going to torture myself in a fun way. And I'm not going to do it the way I normally do, where I watch a really shitty movie. I'm about to watch a very, very fucked up movie. Very incredibly fucked up movie, because it has a lot of political implications, for a war that I am not fully, or like at least an aspect of World War II that I am not fully aware of, like what exactly happened. And I touched on the subject actually on the pod with Jake the other day, but I had to cut the whole portion where I'm talking about this out. I might actually like cut at some point in this and just like kind of pepper in what I was talking about. But yeah, there's a facet of World War II that I think we need to like just, I don't know how, but I would like to know more about it. And it's a little bit difficult to understand because there's a lot of, you got to do it with a very gentle touch without coming off a certain way. And it's a very delicate thing. But the truth is like somewhere in there, and I feel very like personally attached to it because it's like, you know, kind of I have family that fought in World War II. My one half of my family left Russia because of the October Revolution. I just kind of want to know what actually happened over there, because like the US and the German and the US and the Japanese, those conflicts were very well documented, and a lot of other parts of the war were very well documented as well. The problem is, after the fall of Berlin in 1945, there was a race between the Red Army and the US Army to basically get to Berlin, and then whoever got there first got to dictate kind of who gets what and start divvying it up. So Berlin was cut into two pieces, the eastern half to the Russians, the western half to the US. And what happened from there is kind of to the victor go the spoils, but the history is also written by the victor. So you have two winning sides that also are giving conflicting information. And what I mean by that is, I'm like not gonna say, and I'll just say it right now, I'm not here to be a Holocaust denier. That's not even remotely close to what this is about. There's a lot of things that the Red Army did to the Nazis, as well as the Nazis did to the Red Army, that I think went kind of under the radar, and it added a lot of complexity to the issues of what happened post World War II. So there's a lot of reports that a lot of the concentration camps that were used for exterminating people, specifically the ones that were east of Berlin, I guess in Poland, I believe, and most of, at the time, the Soviet Union, there's a lot of war crimes that occurred because at one point the Nazis ordered scorched earth. They were trying to take Stalingrad, and they wanted to get to these oil fields that were gonna kind of fuel the war for the Nazis to conquer Asia and meet Japan in the middle after taking China. That at least seemed like the plan. And you were kind of to continue fueling the war in that direction, you need to take this one spot, and Stalingrad was the spot. So Hitler ordered the total destruction of it, but the Red Army was so deeply entrenched that they held off several thralls of Nazi attempts to sack the city. They got it at a couple of points, but the rebels were so good at guerrilla warfare that they ultimately kicked the Nazis out after a couple of years. I think in 44 was the winter, and then I think that was when the Battle of the Bulge was happening too on the Western Front. So yeah, there's a lot of these simultaneous things going on, and I don't really know what exactly the nature of it is, like who started it. Obviously there's two belligerents, but like there's like like I'm reading from one side that the Nazis, like obviously the Nazis were bad guys, and obviously the Red Army was guilty of doing a lot of atrocities too. Like they're not completely, not culpable for doing all this shit. They still retain a lot of responsibility for war crimes, but because they won, the history has become quite muddled. And this film is called Come and See, and I've seen excerpts of it all over the internet because it's been passed off as propaganda, like legitimate Nazi propaganda, as opposed to like what it is, which is a dramatic, recreation of, I guess, like the sacking of Belarus by the Nazis and the resistance fighters that were kind of there. I don't know much more than that. I just know that it's in Belarus and it's kind of about Nazi atrocities. And like I'm very curious on the subject because it's, this entire film is done in Russian or Polish or whatever the fuck language they speak, and it's got subtitles, but I think they're Russian subtitles. I'm watching it with English subtitles. But yeah, I don't understand a goddamn word of what any of them are saying. And it's like I feel like this is a very authentic thing. It's done in the esteem of whatever the Soviet mindset would be, because I believe this was made in the 80s, if not early 90s. But I want to see what their perspective is on this, because I'm so like morbidly curious about what actually happened. Because there's reports that after Stalingrad basically was like saved, a lot of the Red Army went into Germany. And because Germany had spent the last 2 years basically just decimating their prize jewel of a city that's on the river, like it's like a major shipping port, it's a huge populace, like there's a lot of reasons why that was a very, very naughty thing to do. The Russians were kind of given carte blanche from their higher command to just run train on the Germans. And I'm not talking about just German soldiers. I'm talking about like the German populace as well, as kind of like payback. And then taking it a step further, apparently there was a lot of German internment in their own concentration and death camps that were on the Eastern Front, where the Russian government was deliberately doing things that were just as heinous, if not further heinous, crimes than what the Nazis were doing to prisoners of war and civilians and military-age men, women, children, everybody. It's a mess. But like, because it's a mess, I want to get to the bottom of it. I want to learn more as much as I can about the subject. It's not like I'm sitting here and I'm gonna like try and like crack the code like there's some big conspiracy or some cover-up. But no, I know that the Soviets manipulated the media so heavily at that time that they got away with doing a lot of bad things. But now in the current digital age, where like there's a lot of archived shit that people like me who have a lot of free time on their hands have the ability to go through and scour and find, they're finding inconsistencies with a lot of like the stuff that has been published and regarded as fact for a really long time. Hence why artistic recreations like this kind of do serve as a necessity, because if they're based on something, or if the director had an idea of how something looked or what something was, it would kind of maybe at least get the ball rolling on like, okay, well, if they did that, maybe they saw or did something that would explain, like elaborate a little further on something that potentially could have been real, or maybe like if there's some source material included with it, like, because it is state propaganda from what I understand. I'm curious. I want to know more about this subject because it sounds like a very brutal fucking thing, but it's you kind of only hear about like, okay, the U.S. was, liberating France, and then they moved into Germany and they started finding these camps. That's what you hear. You don't really hear much about like, oh yeah, the Russians had the same shit going on. Hell, you don't even hear much about us interning the Japanese in Nevada and California. That doesn't like people completely fucking forget about that. But regardless, like there's a lot of people getting locked up by the state for seemingly no reason, and it's bothersome that like everybody's just cool with the narrative the way it is. I'm not saying that there's not a lot of truth to that. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying there's more to it, and I want to know what the more to it is. So hence we need shit like this. So I'm gonna quit rambling because I really do want to watch this movie. I'm gonna post the link to it on YouTube as well when I publish this video. but I'm very excited to see it. I just found it purely out of coincidence, and it's got English subtitles, so I'm happy about that. So without further ado, we are watching Come and See. Holy shit. That's the best film I've watched on this podcast. That was a brutal fucking movie. Holy shit. Like I'm giving it this just for, the normal reasons, but that was a terrifying film. Wow. So I'm just gonna leave a link for it in the description of this, and then I'm gonna also probably recommend that you follow along. I had Wikipedia brought up on my phone because there's certain plot points that don't really make sense. There's I wouldn't call it like a lack of translation, but the beginning of this film is very dreamlike. And not in like a good way. I would call it nightmarish, but the film turns from dreamlike to legitimate nightmarish, insanely fast. And there's like a distinction between the two. I would call it vivid. That would be the best way to put it. The beginning starts out with like vivid and somewhat optimistic. The camera work is a little more energetic. There's a little bit of brightness and aura to the frame. There's a subtle, very it's dismal, but it's a very subtle amount of optimism that he's okay. The other thing too, I'm not gonna remember anybody's names. There's one main character, and then a bunch of Russians and a bunch of Nazis, and you're basically there's a handful of women that he encounters too. That's kind of like the first act, second act, third act thing that this film kind of does. It's an interesting way. It's an interesting way of telling a narrative story, but the optimism gets changed like pretty rapidly, and it still is vivid and dreamlike, but the dream is becoming more grounded, both in like a literal sense and like a metaphorical sense. It's not like the film takes place anywhere but the ground, obviously, but like there's these moments of like him, the main character, like being stuck in mud or like trying to kill himself by sticking his head in a puddle. There's a picture of Hitler at the end that he's shooting at, that's stuck in the mud. Like it's I don't know. I know Russian cinema. Not that I can think of much off the top of my head aside from Sergei Eisenstein. But I know it is like a very literal thing. It's very grounded, especially Soviet era cinema, because it was all done, with the state in mind. So it had to reflect the Soviet Union in like a positive light, or at least as the, protagonists in the film, which this film does adequately. It actually is not like an extremely pro-communist film. And it's an anti-war film too. And it's very clear, this is an anti-war, anti-violence film because, it does a good job of explaining that violence begets violence and ultimately solves nothing, but also you get like it never like bashes the Soviets, which I'm gonna get to that. But it does it in like kind of a positive light, but it is very clear that it's like, what did we learn from this? That like you can commit horrific atrocities and the payback just gets you it's the same exact thing, the same exact result. And you're left feeling dismal and horrified. I actually I'm gonna just post the Wikipedia link to the thing so you can follow along on the plot as well if you choose to watch this. I'm telling you right now, like I'm not gonna give, like I said, spoilers or whatever. I don't give spoiler alerts. I'm probably gonna have to put like some exclamation points on there. Like, do not watch this like if you're planning on having fun. I watched 3/4 of this movie before I went to work, and then got up to the scene where they locked everybody in the church, where this film goes fucking crazy off the rails. And it, the last quarter of the film was rough, man. It was rough. And you know what's kind of fucked up too is that at the end of the day, this is a movie. it's based on very true, very real things. But at the end of the day, it is a movie, and I think the guys that were dressed like the Nazis that got to burn the church down, they really did burn a church down. They looked like they were kind of having like fun, and after working on movies, I understand like in the esteem of the film, of the story, and being respectful of the story. I understand that, but there's also a distinction between filmmaking and film interpretation. So we're gonna pause on the film interpretation for a second, and we're gonna say that those guys dressed like Nazis looked like they were having way too good of a fucking time. But then again, at the end of a production, you usually do light shit on fire for whatever reason. It's happened on a couple of the sets I worked on, and yeah, it's usually like a drunken hootenanny. For whatever reason, I'm sure that was probably one of the last things they filmed just specifically for that reason. And it looked like it's Russia, so I'm sure everybody's just fucking blitzed, just trashed on set. Like, unpause. But all that being said, like, back to the interpretation of it. Yeah, like it's a very powerful, gripping film, and there's these themes and motifs all throughout the film that are just incredibly, like, they keep your attention in multiple places while it's like the way kind of like a puppeteer plays a marionette, like it's all kind of attached to the same thing, but there's these little elements, and like you get like a hand wiggling, and then you get like the leg going. It's pulling at you in different ways all throughout the film. And I really like that. It creates suspense. The mood of just like being destitute and just gloomy is so well established. But then it's like it keeps taking it to new levels as he further progresses into this like hellscape. And it's like I know that like they can't control fog necessarily, but like the choosing to shoot in the fog as well definitely adds this element of like isolation and confusion in a lot of the scenes that like he's in the forest, and like you kind of get like a sense of like isolation, but more like you're walled off from kind of this war that's going on. But then you get this like fog, and the war is just kind of like enveloping him, like the fog is enveloping like you get this like looming sense of something bad gonna happen, and it does it in like a very like good visual level, but also like that is exactly what fucking happens. So it's just like a masterpiece of cinematography, and like storytelling in general. But I don't want to dwell on the negatives of this, but I did while reading, I had to look a couple of things up. I try to keep this as apolitical as possible, but like this is a film that like if you're going to watch, this is definitely a film that was made with a purpose, and I feel like this is one of those things that has to be addressed. So, like I said, it's not necessarily a pro-Soviet film, although, like I said, the Soviets were the protagonist in this film. One of the things that I read, and I just kind of came across it because there was a lot of payback, and I'm going to get to that in a second for this film. But like in regards to the actions in Belarus that were taken by the Nazis, there was a shitload of retribution done by the Red Army, and we're gonna get into that in a second. But just for the accuracy of this film, because like I'm not gonna spoil anything. You can look up what happened, and I'm sure that if you've ever been on 4chan, the photo from this film that the kid with the gun pointed at him, it's been passed around quite a bit. But yeah, there was a lady that after viewing the film with a very shocked audience, mind you, I'll just read that quote. This is from Wikipedia. During one of the after-film discussions, an elderly German lady stood up and said, "I was a soldier for the Wehrmacht. Moreover, I was an officer for the Wehrmacht." I don't fucking speak German. Fuck you. Moreover, an officer for the Wehrmacht. I traveled through all of Poland and Belarus and finally reaching Ukraine. I will testify. Everything that is told in this film is truth. And the most frightening and shameful thing for me is that this film will be seen by my children and my grandchildren. So there's a lot of embellishment that takes place in filmmaking to make a story more zesty. Not only is like authentic World War II footage intermittently spliced throughout this film of like the Nazis committing atrocities in Belarus and Ukraine and Poland, and Hitler's rise to power, obviously, you have as true to the source material. This is like a Spielberg tier paying honest homage to what happened. And this was made in 1984. So a lot of money and a lot of attention was paid to detail on this. It shows, and just on a purely cinematic level, it shows just how dedicated to making this film look not only correct, but good, and deliver the message visually that they wanted to. It all comes together so well. Like I said, it's a marionette. It's like this medley of like very good, astute filmmaking and storytelling all blended together. It's very good. But I just felt the need to share that little bit. There's a lot of times where you do get embellishments, and it's kind of to a detriment. A very good friend of mine, who I will not mention his name right now, but he was a coworker of mine. He was an Army vet, and he signed up right around the time 9/11 happened. I don't know if it was before or after, but I do remember that was kind of around the time where he enlisted in the Army. And he was telling me that right around that time, Black Hawk Down came out, and he remembers being very, like, walking out of the theater extremely pissed about the handling of that. Not only like the situation annoyed him because he had to like kind of relive something that he had been taught very heavily, but he didn't like the way that Michael Bay necessarily like handled the source material on that, and he said that it was it kind of downplayed certain elements. And I'm not quoting on that, but he's like, yeah, that was made as an action movie. That wasn't paying homage to these soldiers. That was just meant to put asses in seats and give you something mindless. Like Saving Private Ryan, on the other hand, a lot of veterans saw that and were like openly weeping at the D-Day scene because they were there, and they said that was like super true. So you get like, kind of two sides of the coin. Like some people pay like extreme attention to detail, and then some people just kind of do it to like embellish and get better reviews because they've made a more interesting action movie. And like, it is what it is. But this film goes to the umpteenth degree, and like I would say surpasses Spielberg in many ways because the story is at least authentic. So yeah, that being said, I wanted to kind of touch on something. So this film, like I said, it doesn't paint the Soviets. I know I sound like a broken record saying this. It doesn't paint the Soviets in like a good light. And I think that the reason that that's done is this is an anti-war film. It's like an anti-violence film. It's a film that illustrates like the futility of just like aggression against civilian populace, like basically bullying the defenseless. It's atrocious, and it's the reason they call it an atrocity. But it's hard to watch, and this was, with that being said, the authenticity is there, definitely. So I feel the need to address that the Red Army got some major payback for these crimes. And I need to double check my source here because I still have it. But I want to make sure I get this number right. So once I think the Nazis had overexerted themselves and realized like trying to go to war with Russia in the winter is a big stupid idea, and started pulling back. Russia in I think it says 44. Fuck. I'm not gonna spend all fucking day looking for this. Yeah, 1944. Okay, cool. So yeah, they started pulling back into Germany from Russian Soviet occupied territories, and the Red Army was basically issuing commands. I heard a rumor too that the Red Army was saying if you could get a complete SS officer's uniform, including like the pistol and all like the dressage and shit that you need, you apparently could completely get out of conscripting. Like they would just like let you out of the army. I thought that was an interesting fact, but this is going a lot darker. They basically issued the High Command issued orders that as payback for all of these atrocities that they committed in the Eastern Front, that the Red Army was to rape as many fucking women as they could, which the number I'm looking at right now is pretty fucking astounding. It says on the border of range up to 2 million. According to historian William Hitchcock, in many cases, women's women were the victims of repeated rapes, as some as many as 60 to 70 times. At least 100,000 women are believed to have been raped in Berlin, based on the surging abortion rates the following months, with an estimated 10,000 women dying in the aftermath. So almost 2 million women were raped by Red Army soldiers that were running through as payback. And not to mention the whole scorched earth thing, that happened as well. They were burning the shit out of everything. It was like fucking Sherman's March to Sea all over again, but from the east. It wasn't good. And then like there's another bit of it too that it's kind of controversial, but like I was saying, there's a lot of these death camps that they were on the east of Berlin, so they were on the Soviet side, and allegedly some of these camps, as like ultra payback, were used to intern the Nazis that were deemed very like unfit for trial, and they basically would like rape and torture them in these camps and then like get rid of their crimes because the Nazis did the same thing to them. I'm not sure what the extent is. I know this is like technically billed as a conspiracy theory, but like, I mean, it's pretty obvious. And then the Nazis tried to hide their fucking like what they did too. They did a bunch of reconstruction and renovation, or like when the Red Cross, I guess, tried to come through in like the 90s to check it out. Like there was like a lot of stuff that like didn't add up. And I'm not talking about like numbers or anything. I'm talking about like the fucking architecture of the buildings was like completely renovated so that they couldn't do like any proper testing on shit. It's very strange. It's an interesting, like, I know it's a conspiracy theory, but like it is a fascinating thing. Like, what did the Soviets actually do? Like, how much further did they take it past like, the war ending? Like, what actually happened? Because they never had a chance, really. Nobody from the West was allowed into the, past the Iron Curtain. So yeah, like, my reception of this film, I got 4 minutes left. I'm just gonna lay it out there. This was a horrifying movie. I really enjoyed it. I think that it was expertly acted. That all of the characters and the little like Eastern, or not Eastern, but like Russian quirks kind of shine through. There's like a lot of stuff that I'm sure like you kind of need the plot synopsis from Wikipedia to like get through like the beginning, because there's a lot going on that like goes unsaid, but I'm assuming it's just kind of like lost in translation. But like with the assistance of that, it very much like amplifies the not only like the brutality of the movie, but like kind of the charm that some of the little like moments that eke themselves through that illustrate just like how like bizarre and morbid this is. Like there's this part where like I think he's like bathing with the chick or whatever in the beginning, and like I don't know if he's having a daydream or if she is just like literally dancing on a suitcase, but like it's very Russian. But like there's this like thing I remember from what's the movie, Enemy at the Gates, with Jude Law and whatever that other chick, fucking yeah, there's a couple of people in that movie, but yeah, Ron Perlman's in that movie too. Anyway, that there's like this like little monologue that Jude Law does where he's talking about how like Russians treat like every day that they came back from like going out and fucking people up in Stalingrad, like fucking up the Nazis in Stalingrad, like every day was kind of like a victory, so they treated it. So like I think like the downtime is just them kind of like appreciating being alive, and that I always like remembered that line from Enemy at the Gates, but it's a really like it does kind of shine through, and that this film precedes that film by like I think 20 years. So if that translates without like kind of going unsaid, it is very well done. I just like that there's like it's a very authentic movie. I like authenticity. They didn't like, they really just laid it out there, and it's very Russian. And I guess I'm a fan of Russian. I'm half Russian. I mean, my last name's Skrock, but my mom's maiden name was Ballinghoff. So I got 50% Ruski blood in me, and I see this, and it's like I gravitate towards Russian filmmaking. I like kind of dork out on this. I guess some people are like Japanophiles. I guess I'm a Ruski-phile. I find the culture to be fascinating, and like their whole disposition like to be like both like gross and curious. So I don't know. Call me I'm a little closet gopnik. Yeah, I think I've dwelled on this negative shit. I did want to say something though. After the last film that I watched, I know that I keep saying I'm going to put out a black tooth. I have one. I've been editing it for like 4 days now, and I do it in like little 20-minute chunks. But I keep having to like edit it so heavy that it like, not that like it's anything like bad. It's just like we keep saying people's last names and shit, and we got to work on that. But yeah, there's about like 2 hours worth of material. I got it whittled down to about like an hour and 10 right now. I need to like tighten it up and like get rid of something, put some more bleeps in there. But yeah, keep your ears peeled for that shit. And fucking give myself that one for that. Your ears peeled. Why don't you keep your fucking skull peeled back with a fucking shotgun sprocket? All right, good job. Fucking war movie talking about blowing my brains out. Thank you for listening. And yeah, we'll be coming out with some fun shit in the near future.